Welcome to the Artist Work Ethic Podcast. I'm Mike Pelak. I'm a screenwriter, actor, and filmmaker who's always looking to maximize my time and potential as I work to break in. In this podcast, I talk to artists of all kinds who have seen success in their fields about their process, habits, and work ethic. Today on the show is Tom May. Tom plays guitar and is one of the two vocalists in the Menzingers. The Menzingers have toured the world with bands such as Taking Back Sunday, Tiger's Jaw, and Off With Their Heads. They've put out 7 studio albums, the most recent being Some of It Was True, which was just released on Epitaph Records. A couple quick things before we jump into the episode. I've talked in the past about myself working on breaking into screenwriting. Please check out blackoilfilms.com/screenwriting. There you can check out some of the screenplays I've written. I have the first 10 pages of each one uploaded, but feel free to email me at theartistsworkethicpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a full script if you're interested in reading. Last thing before we get into the episode, I would love anyone listening to subscribe, rate, and review the Artists Work Ethic Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us put the show out there for more people to listen to. All right, Tom, thank you for coming on with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So through punk rock, we both come from a DIY or DIY influenced background. How has DIY influenced your work ethic to this day?
It set us up for, I think, a type of success we normally wouldn't get without coming through the DIY background and considering our personal backgrounds, because it taught us that not really everything is, there's not really very many things that are out of reach. The limit to what you can do isn't, the typical kind of gatekeeping isn't there in the same way, because you come from a DIY approach and you're like, oh, well, I don't have to find someone who knows how to do this necessarily. I can do it, or I can find a friend who does it, or there's not a system or set way of doing things that's the only way to do it. So you kind of come in, learn that really fast to be able to improvise and also to be able to forge your own path.
How has, I guess with the Menzingers, how has patience and persistence and perseverance and all that informed your path over the years? Because I feel like you've had a pretty steady rise that has just continued. You know, it wasn't like an overnight thing, but it's just, you've been on like an on-ramp for years now.
Totally. My joke is always we're on the XY plane, 1 = 1 kind of just regular growth thing, which has been really awesome for us. We didn't have a meteoric rise or a huge pitfall, thank knock on wood, or anything like that. So we're able to adapt and grow the way that our band was adapting and growing. You know, the joke is that if we had become huge when we were like 21 or 22 and got like paid and all that shit, we'd be dead or whatever from going too hard or being too crazy. But yeah, that's what I was going to bring up at the beginning of your question. We literally have just been able to rise kind of very slowly and surely, and it's been an absolute blessing.
Is there an example in your career, whether as a band or as you individually, where you have done something to make your own luck?
Sure.
Any sort of examples?
No, there's I think a couple, mainly going in with the mindset of it. First of all, I got to say, I'm a huge fan of this type of podcast, this type of information. I'm a real sucker for, let's say, like your Tim Ferriss style kind of shit. I'm always looking for trying to figure out a way to organize ourselves better, or to just figure out ways that people do things differently and try to learn from it. So someone had said on some fucking book or podcast, I don't remember what it was, but their idea is that you can increase your service area for luck. And I totally believe that. And one of the things that we kind of do for us, the specific examples would be, we went on tour with a lot of bands that we didn't necessarily fit perfectly into a pigeonholed subgenre with. Like, we were one of the few bands at the time that could tour with Propaganda, and then I think the next tour we did was with Taking Back Sunday. So it was like a lot of, which might, zooming out, it's all rock and roll, it's all punk rock and roll in the 20 teens of the fucking world. But for us, a lot of times when we would get into a situation where we're like, okay, well, this isn't punk or this is too punk, we kind of stepped away from that a little bit and decided to branch it out. And that worked out for us because we got fans of all kinds of walks of life after that.
Have you ever doubted your path as a musician?
Yeah. There's totally, but not to dive too into like imposter syndrome where you're trying to write stuff or you're thinking, what am I doing? What do I even know how to do? Because essentially, as you know, you've been in the scene, we're not guitar virtuosos. I'm not like really good at playing guitar. And if I sat in a room full of any random room or any random bar, there's probably going to be 4 people in there that are better at guitar than I am. So you kind of think of like, you question that part of it. But specifically, there's definitely decisions that we made that were dumb, financial decisions or whatever it was that kind of I guess, well, sorry, was the question, is there anything that we regret, or was there anything that you saw?
Just like if you ever had doubts in your career,
Doubts.
and just kind of how you push through them, like those moments of, we'll say you spent 8 months in a van and you walked away with $35 and you were going, well, I can't do this anymore. But then you woke up the next day and were like, nah, I have to.
Yeah. So to be honest, the doubts only kind of existed in that momentary abstract. There was never a time where I seriously considered that it, well, of course we considered from a realistic standpoint that it might not work, but we never really doubted it. And I personally didn't really doubt it because we just decided that there was no real other option. And we chose that collectively and did all the things we needed to do. Obviously we got really lucky, but we also lived in the same house, all were on the same page, ate the same food, had the same goals, and we were kind of just not going to take no for an answer. So it was either going to work or we were going to completely fall apart trying it.
How do you today structure your day, whether you're home or on tour, to kind of stay productive and, be writing and keeping up with whatever business parts of this that you do, and any of that stuff is, especially I'm sure with press around the new record, and how are you structuring yourself to also balance your own life too?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I found growing, at the beginning of our band and at other times in my life, I've had some trouble with that, specifically with organization and with approaches. I got diagnosed with ADHD like a long time ago, and that when in my early 20s. And that's, that's a whole thing to unpack about all the different, that's a whole other fucking podcast, I think. But for me, what I'm able to do as far as like structuring the day, there are some things that really ended up making it work. One is routines. I never really it took me until my late 20s to realize that habits are what you are essentially. So your habits are what make you more than anything else. It's a redundant thing to say almost, but you're like, I'm an X or I'm a whatever. It really is, well, what is your habits? How do you identify yourself? So waking up in the morning, I almost always write, whether it is an exercise called morning pages, where you kind of just dump your mind out, or I use this app called Day One, which is a cross-platform journaling app that is a lifesaver. So it's just dumping out things that are creative or whatever, or what I got to do for the day. And then I write everything down on the index card. I have one right here, actually. It's just, I keep it in my back pocket. So it's really easy for me to kind of remember what it is I got to do, because I could never able to time block or anything like that. I do the bookkeeping for the band, and I do it on Mondays and Fridays, or at least one or the other. So I call it Money Monday or Financial Friday. And just always, it's simple. We're a band, so we don't have that. It's not like I have to go over a store's worth of transactions or something. It's just doing the QuickBooks and making sure that all the bills are paid and everybody's paid. And then for how to stay, my day looks like right now, we're not on tour. It's in between tours for a while. We're writing again. I'm in a studio that I rent myself. We have a band studio as well, but I have a studio I rent in a basement, in Alexander Hamilton's old basement, actually, in Old City in Philadelphia. And I come here every day, no matter what, and do at least an hour or 2 hours of writing. And that is, I give myself some leniency on that. So it's either making ambient music or practicing our songs that we already have, or writing something. I found that if you do it every single day, as often as you can, and we found it collectively as a band while we're writing a record, we just meet up together every day, that is how you push through the different things like writer's block or whatever. And that's, I guess, how we structure the day.
So something, kind of going off that, something like if you're ever starting to feel burnout, how do you deal with that, especially with the perspective of the band where there are other people counting on you as well?
Yeah, that's tough. So it took a lot, I feel like I keep saying this, but it took a long time. We've recently, over the last 4 or 5 years, come up with a lot of ways to do all the things better. And who would have thought, when the main one combating burnout is communication. I found that just literally vocalizing how I feel, it's vulnerable. Obviously, like, guys, I can't sit in this fucking room anymore. that allows everybody to talk about it, and we make a lot of space for each, and make room for each other to be able to be able to do that. I found that that's the best way for us to break it collectively. And when I need to break it personally, I usually will use psychedelics, maybe like once every 2 or 3 months in varying dosages. And then also I really like to, when I'm having writer's block or I'm feeling burnt out, to kind of go out and do something on a whim. I live in a place that's extremely walkable, so I just walk around until I find something, go in there, get caught in like somebody else's gravity, just do something weird that you normally would never do, whether it's an art show or it's like a weird looking bar or whatever it is. Just try to get out of the routine and mind space of whatever it was before.
So you're sitting down to write. Do you prefer early morning or like late night, or just, I know you had mentioned that you write for an hour or two every morning. Is that kind of your, I know some people love to just at 2 a.m. is when they're rocking, and like, I can't do that. I'm a morning guy as well, but.
Yeah, for my whole life, I was a 2 a.m. guy. My entire life, I had different, I wasn't able to sleep. I would sleep like 4 or 6 hours a night. I had like different bouts of insomnia and shit. And I always wrote some of my best songs at nighttime. And then over the last maybe 2-3 years, I turned into a morning person. I don't know if like some kind of fucking hormonal cyclical thing happened and I'm getting older, but I literally get I get more done now, and I do it at first thing when I wake up. It's really bizarre.
All right, man, anything you want to plug, or if this won't be coming out till the middle of November, but if you want to mention the new record coming out?
Sure. We put out a new record on October 13th, and we're touring full US and Canada tour all of November and December. So we might be coming somewhere near you, and hopefully it's all going well.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on with me today, Tom.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you so much for listening today. Please subscribe to the Artist Work Ethic podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and please rate and review the show. Follow us on Instagram at The Artist's Work Ethic, and check out theartistsworkethic.com.